about 2 months ago, I did a webinar on ChatGPT for OSINT. And what kicked that off is I saw someone mention in a Discord, they said, oh, ChatGPT is kind of cool, but I don't use it from OSINT at all. And I was just thinking, really? Like, I use that every single day. And so I gave a talk kind of on how we could use some of the new capabilities out there, ChatGPT, Whisper, a few other things on Hugging Face in all phases of the OSINT lifecycle. So then when they set up this summit, they asked me, they said, hey, can you give kind of a presentation, just a quick 20 minutes on what's updated, right? What's changed from that? So who I am, as Rob said, I'm a SANS author of the 497 OSINT course. Spent most of my adult life working for the government and federal law enforcement, but I've also done a lot of work in private sector too, and some other stuff that's not important right now. So what are we going to be talking about? We're going to start off talking about what's changed in the past 2 months, right? Then we're going to talk about what kind of trends I see coming. And predictions may be a little bit of a strong word, right? I think one of them I'm just trying to like will into existence greatly. We'll talk about that when we get there. And then the final thing, right, is these changes that we're talking about here very briefly this afternoon, at least here in Arizona. What does this kind of mean for OSINT and OPSEC? And I don't want to just rehash what we talked about 2 months ago. That's out there. You can watch it if you want to. I think it was pretty good and it's aged well. Everything's still in play, right? But what some of these new capabilities can bring to the table. I think the biggest one right now is we finally have internet access easily in ChatGPT, right? We don't need browser plugins or LangChain or anything else to kind of get this going. And it could be just a coincidence, but a few weeks ago, there was one day when I was trying to use ChatGPT and it was just struggling. And I have like the GPT Plus. And I remember kind of like, I wonder if it's just me. I went to Reddit and there was a lot of people having very, very similar issues. And what was starting to trend was like, what am I paying for? Right? Why am I paying you $20 a month for unlimited access when number one, I'm having access issues now. And number two, like even people that aren't paying now have access to GPT-4. So what am I paying for? You saw that trending. This could have been a complete coincidence, but literally within like 48 hours, ChatGPT came out and said, hey, next week, we're rolling out internet access and we're rolling out plugins for everyone, right? And these are fantastic because this is a way to very, very easily, with not having to code or without having to do anything else, solve, I think, two of the biggest quote unquote issues, right? The limitations with ChatGPT, internet access and access to other documents. There's still some work to be done in dealing with large data sets in ChatGPT, but as an example of what I was able to do last week, I got an email with a spreadsheet attached for the 42 proposals that have been submitted to the SANS OSINT Summit, which we haven't even decided yet, right? They haven't even gone to the board to pick yet. I think, well, they have gone, they haven't come back yet. And I'm like, that was sent to me. It was in a Google Drive. Let me check this. So I went to ChatGPT. I gave it the link to the Google Drive and I said, what are the top 10 themes covered in the proposals? And you can see he kind of analyzed it for a few seconds and came back and broke it down from the 42 proposals sitting in a spreadsheet in Google Drive, kind of the top 10 themes. Several presentations discuss the importance of OPSEC, AI, weighted in the number 2 slot right there. And so this is cool, right? It has internet access. It has the capability to deal with other documents, a lot of useful stuff in here. One of the questions that I got when I did that GPT for OSINT webinar, and I answered all the questions in my blog post that weekend, someone asked a question about persistent monitoring and how ChatGPT could be useful for that. And I said that I thought right then at the time that its biggest functionality was in writing code to do persistent monitoring. I've been using it for that basically since it came out, right? For kind of enhancing and speeding up my coding projects. But then I made this, it wasn't like a bold prediction, right? I'm not Nostradamus or anything like that. It was pretty clear. It was just a matter of when, not if. I said there, we may literally be weeks away from having functionality very similar to ChatGPT running on our local systems, right? At that point, let your imagination run wild. We were not weeks away. We were actually days away. I think literally a few days later, they came out with this, Vicuna. And this is basically, they said, running locally on your system, about 90% quality of ChatGPT 4. It is absolutely crazy. Of course, I went and played with it, right? I had to do a little bit of tuning because it's an 8 gig model and my video card currently only has 8 gigs. So it was kind of tough making it all in there. And it worked, and that's cool. And we've seen more and more of these models come out, but right now these local models are very similar to kind of proof of concept code and more of tech demos, I think, frankly, on a lot of people's personal systems. If you have fantastic specs, you can get some reasonable performance. But right now, I have a decent, right, password cracking rig, kind of video gaming computer. It's good, not great. And these things run incredibly slow, right? But they do run on the local system. And so as this improves, it's going to open up a world of capabilities, right? They're slowly, for this space, getting more and more usable, right? We saw a recent one right here, private GPT. Someone brought to my attention last week. We'll talk about a talk of his here in a minute. And this was getting very, very popular on GitHub. And this is locally ChatGPT analyzing a document or a whole directory full of documents, right? And just kind of giving you a response with nothing going to the internet. So this is fantastic from an OPSEC perspective, right? To being able to analyze some of your local documents and ask questions based off them or summarizing them or analyzing them without having to go to the internet. Plus, it doesn't cost anything, right? We're not even using GPT at the API level here. This is just local language models. Now, it took in data in seconds, right? It takes seconds to get going. And you're like, wow, this is fantastic. And then you ask it a question. And here what I did is I ingested the transcripts from a 1-hour talk on YouTube. It was a Sam Bentz OPSEC for kind of dark web vendors talk at last year's DEF CON. I put it in here, I ingested it. Like I said, it ingested it and processed it in seconds. But then when I asked a very simple question, what are the key points to enhance your OPSEC on the dark web? It gave me an okay, not great answer, and it took almost 3 minutes, right? So once again, we're back to it runs on a local system, which is incredible. And like I said, it's going to open up a world of possibilities, some of which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Right now, it's just very, very slow on most people's equipment, or even frankly can't run, I think, on a majority probably of the average kind of home computer. But we're close to being able to do amazing things. And I think this is the only example that I have from the last talk in here is sentiment, right? Because sentiment, for anyone who's tried to deal with it, has been such a train wreck for so long, and it seemed like such a hard problem to solve. And you see this tweet, right? Oh, this is bad AF, y'all killed it. That was classified as literally the most negative tweet in this kind of query that I ran before, when clearly you look at that and that's positive sentiment, right? But AI, machine learning, some of the things, it's just made to order for this, right? And here you see when I tried Google Bard, it nailed it. So this is actually very positive, and then went into an explanation. And so we've been able to do things like persistent monitoring and looking for a series of keywords and applying some logic for years now. I've been doing that for over a decade. But now we're just right on the cusp, right, of being able to add in things like sentiment that have normally required a human to kind of understand context. And now we're close to being able to automate a lot of that. And that's fantastic. What are some trends that I kind of think I'm seeing so far? And let's take a second and let's think about Linux, right? If you're a Linux user or you're not, you have this group of people, right? I think a minority at this point who are like, I want full control. That's the best thing about Linux, right? I use Arch Linux. Like, if you don't compile your own kernel, how do you even really know what's going on, right? How can you trust it? And there's those people out there. A few of them are my friends, and that's great. I am out of the camp of, listen, I got stuff to do. I'm just going to use Ubuntu. It's fine. It gets the job done. I'm just going to use that, right? It's easy to go. And I think you're going to start to see that same type of dynamic form when it comes to this space, right? The artificial intelligence space. The hard stuff will continue to get more and more abstracted away from us, right? It's like, oh, even not that long ago, you needed to have these math chops, these legitimate math chops to be able to play in the space and understand what was going on. And now you see people doing amazing things using these tools like ChatGPT with none of those math chops, right? I use my phone every single day. There are parts of it that I do not, frankly, understand necessarily how they work, but doesn't mean we can't use it every day, right? So you're seeing the hard stuff getting more and more abstracted away from us. This is not a bad thing, right? And here's one example of, it used to be when you saw these local language models where you could download and get that capability running on your system, it was like, oh, well, you can train this model for only $300 in resources, or only $500 in resources, or for this and for that. The training in the model has now largely been replaced by people who are like, yeah, I did it. Just click here and download it, right? Just download it. In 1 minute, you're up and running. And some people would scream and throw a fit and say, how can you do it? How can you trust it? How can you, once again, back to that Linux dynamic, right? There's always going to be people that want full control. And there's always going to be people that say, hey, thousands of people are using this. No one's had an issue with it. Looks good. I'm just going to grab that, right? We're going to see this easy mode continue to emerge more and more. That last prediction trend, I think, is a very, very safe one. We're just going to continue to see that continue. This one is more, I think, a little bit of maybe wishful thinking on my part. Something is going to have to change when it comes to GPU, though, right? It's like I said, even a very, very good graphics card right now designed for computer gaming doesn't run the best with these local models, right? And frankly, too, you're almost seeing like the same thing we saw before when cryptocurrency came out. I can remember going for coffee one morning, and it was the middle of the year, and seeing a long line out of Best Buy. I'm like, what's going on? Is there some new video game released? It's not Christmas. It looked like a Black Friday type of line. And it was, oh, they were getting a batch of new video cards in, right? And some of those people in line were probably playing video games. Some wanted to use it to mine cryptocurrency, but it was kind of crazy, right? And so even some of these very, very beefy cards are struggling with AI, right? And you're seeing these enterprise type of cards that aren't even designed really to do graphics or anything. They're just crunching the data, huge amounts of RAM, huge price tags. You see here the most popular one that you see people talking about, A100. Those things are not cheap. They're not cheap in any way, shape, or form. I think we're going to see something shift in this market. The same way with cryptocurrency, more and more people for most cryptocurrencies, right? They stopped using graphics cards and they kind of shifted over to ASICs, these specialized devices that were just good for mining, nothing else. They used less power. They were cheaper. You started to see them at AliExpress and DHgate and a lot of these places where you can find things very cheap. And I think something's got to emerge in this same AI space, right? To give us something, maybe cards that aren't geared for playing games or doing those types of things, but still have lots of memory designed for loading in these large language models. So we'll see what that looks like. Like I said, that may be more wishful thinking on my part. NVIDIA at this point really has a chokehold on the entire space right now. CUDA just makes it so easy to get it working with your code that it just keeps on more and more things are supporting that. But something's got to give. We'll see what exactly that looks like, I think. So for what we've talked about so far, right, as we start trying to wrap up here, very, very short on time today, what this could bring in the way of new capabilities for OSINT and OPSEC, right? What do some of these changes look like? We can write code to browse forums, right, to surf websites and monitor what people are talking about. Like I said, I've been doing that for well over a decade. That makes it very, very easy to search for some things, but not everything necessarily, right? And I think back to one time working on a persistent monitoring program that I had running for a lot of different things and trying to help out one government agency. And they were monitoring for people who were recruiting people online for illegal activity, right? Hanging out in like certain Facebook marketplaces in different local communities and trying to recruit people to perform illegal activity. Hey, do you have a driver's license and a keen sense of adventure? Would you like to earn over $1,000 a day? No questions asked. Hit me up, right? Like trying to monitor for that. And so there were certain keywords, certain combinations of words, certain phrases that we could look for. I think my favorite there was one recruiter who was always ending it with like, don't worry, it's nothing bad though. Hey, do you have no morals on a driver's license and you want to earn $1,500 a day? Hit me up, but don't worry, it's nothing bad though, right? And that actually became a signature. Someone saying, don't worry, it's nothing bad though. And you start to think, wow, you know what we're once again so close from, right? With some of these capabilities running locally on your system. Yeah, we can have code. ChatGPT can help us write the code. Frankly, we can have code running right now that is sitting there and scraping all of this data from these chat forms and everything else. But now what if we gave it examples of what we had seen before that we were looking for? We could actually train it, right? Once again, providing things that normally if we just needed a human for certain context, right? And it's like, but training it on examples and letting it find that, we're so close to adding in, once again, capability that we just haven't been able to add in anymore in so many ways, right? And so being able to give it samples to make things easier to train, I absolutely positively cannot wait. And you think of how fast the space is progressing, right? It really, really, truly is. And like I said, LangChain, tools like Private GPT give us the capability to search local repositories of information right now. Right now, this exists out of the box. It's slow on my system. I think it's slow on pretty much all of our systems, but the capability exists. And so as this capability is improved and as it becomes much faster, I think the possibilities, frankly, are endless. I really do. And it's just as one example here, I think of something as simple as looking at two case files, right? As simple and daunting at the same time, looking at two separate case files for similarities, right? And what we would do right now is it would require a human being providing a lot of effort to kind of manually pour over and try to, okay, let me look at this, and see what do they have in common, right? The other thing we could do, well, we could build a program to do that right now, okay? But once again, it requires a lot of human effort, right? To design this program, to think of what the logic should be and basically flow chart it out of what you're looking for and what you care about, and then having someone write the code to actually implement that. And now, once again, right now, you're looking at this capability like Private GPT and some of these other things, and we can do this with plain text, right? We can give it access to two separate directories of information and say, hey, what similarities do you see? This is the type of stuff that I'm interested in, right? And it just, like I said, we're so close to having that, right? In a more usable format. We have it right now. We just have to get to the place where I think it's a little more usable, a little quicker, kind of on our on things that can be purchased and owned by most people in small businesses, right? And we'll see what that looks like. Otherwise, you're going to continue to just basically outsource that to the cloud, right? We have local language models now that are at least getting very comparable to GPT-4, right? We're paying for speed, we're paying for access to their models to run on their hardware, frankly, is now a big part of what we're paying for. And I think the last slide I have in this presentation, right, we were kind of talking about what some of these changes mean for OSINT. And once again, if you want to see how the OSINT can be used at the different phases, please check out that the webinar from about 2 months ago. It was called ChatGPT, the new OSINT cheat code. But then when you start thinking about OPSEC, right, OPSEC's crazy because what do you even want to talk about? OPSEC itself is kind of a cat and mouse game. It always has been, right? I come out with a new thing to kind of bypass what you're looking for, then you adjust what you're looking for, then I bypass that. Right now, AI and machine learning has made creating personas easier than ever, right? We talk about that in our 497 class. I've talked about it a few other times. Things that before, like trying to take two pictures of real people and morph them into one fake person that looks real in a way that is not easily detected, is like a GAN generated image from this person does not exist. Before, that required like what? Amazing Photoshop skills or some pricey software that maybe had limited who it could be sold to. And now there's things on Hugging Face completely for free that we can go use to do this and make these realistic looking personas. And so we can create personas now at a scale and a speed and a quality that's never been thought possible. But also now think of what we've had to do before to detect irregularities and kind of detect some of these networks and identify it. We can now do that at a scale that we've never seen before. And so I think the thing is really with ChatGPT, last week, a very nice neighbor lady came over after work, and she just wanted to kind of come over for a drink. And as she was talking, she said how she was looking for a job and had been working on her resume, but she didn't think her resume was very good. And I told her, well, have you used ChatGPT to help you? And she's like, no, I don't want to cheat. I just kind of laughed. I'm like, this isn't cheating, right? Whatever you're doing right now, be it OSINT, OPSEC, whatever it is, there's probably a way that this technology can help you. Right. And so we need to get good at this. It's like, oh, who is it going to favor? It's going to favor everyone who uses it, right? No matter what you're doing. And so we just kind of have that mindset of how this capability can help, right? It's not trying to replace us. It's just trying to get us a lot better at what we're doing, a lot more efficient at what we're doing, and hopefully kind of automating things that we don't necessarily like doing and letting us focus on things that we do enjoy doing. So hopefully that's where it's heading. I do believe that is exactly 20 minutes to the second, Rob Lee. So